This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Electricast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli with another episode of my podcast, Let's Talk Soul. Today I have with me a guest called Tigrilla Gardenia. Tigrilla, say hello to our audience.
Hello, everyone.
Tigrilla is a bachelor of music and a master's in science. She's a nature-inspired mentor and a certified life coach, and powers multipassionate alternate thinkers to harness their brilliance and overcome self-doubt. I'm doubting myself about my pronunciation now. To overcome self-doubt through deep collaboration with the plant world, combining over 25 years of experience in the arts, technology, communication, and ecosystem innovation. Tigrilla merges plant neurobiology, ecosystem thinking, community dynamics, and esoteric teachings to help you evolve limiting beliefs, unifying your passions, and thrive alongside plant collaborators. So, as you can see, we have, the world to pick from to talk about. But let me continue. She's a citizen of Damanhur. It's located in Italy. It's one of the world's largest spiritual eco communities. Tigrilla discovered her calling through a life-changing encounter with a musical plant. She is a Gaia Featured Expert, Kabbalist, instructor of Damanhur MeditAction, international speaker, and founder of the Naturally Conscious Community, an online ecosystem for creative minds seeking accelerated evolution with more than human kin. She also hosts a podcast. The podcast is called Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. She explores the intersection of science, spirituality, and personal growth, revealing how plant intelligence can reshape the way we live, the way we lead, and co-create. Through her courses, personalized coaching, and live masterclasses, you gain practical tools to align with natural rhythms, get clarity on next steps, and cultivate meaningful relations rooted in connection and co-evolution. With Tigrilla's support, you'll learn to stop forcing and start flowing, embracing your true nature with confidence, ease, and purpose. And in the description of the episode, I will include ways you can contact her and all her social media. Well, welcome, Tigrilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we have a bunch, when we talk about plant life and the ecosystem, it's just, there's no ceiling, the universe is the limit. You did mention plant consciousness as co-intelligence. Maybe we could start with that topic, how plants communicate, adapt, and co-create with their environments.
I would love to. Where should we talk about in relation to this? It's such a huge topic. There's so many different pieces to go through.
How did you get into this?
So, as you just read, so I live in Damanhur, and Damanhur is I call it a mix between Hogwarts and
Yes.
and Oz. That's kind of what it's like living here.
That's what
it's a very
I got
unusual
when I
place.
first read about it. Yeah.
And so I was here and I was walking down one of our main areas in our historic capital, and I heard this music. Now, as you said, I have a BM. I have a bachelor's in music. It's actually in music engineering and electrical engineering. So it's kind of already this little bit of a right brain, left brain piece where it brings together the technical as well as the artistic. And so my mind has always worked in that way. Music really is... it's hard to even put it into words because it's beyond words, and that's the whole thing. We think of music as a type of language, but in reality, it's language that's a musicality. Music is what comes first. Music is really what we experience through life. Rhythm and tone and all these different pieces come together in order for us to make meaning. And so I heard this music and I followed it because it was like, what is what? And I just couldn't stop myself.
Let me stop you a moment. When you say I followed it, you mean actually moving your body toward this sound? Okay.
Correct. I was walking down and I heard this music and I went to seek out the musician because it was such an unusual type of music. It wasn't like something I understood. And at the same time, it felt very familiar. And so when I came up to this sort of connection, I don't know, it was like a box that was connected to a speaker. And then on the other side, it was connected to a plant. And I was just like, what is going on here? And all of a sudden I was staring at this plant and it finally clicked in my mind. It was like, oh my goodness, you're the musician. And in some way, in the sounds that were coming out, I heard a confirmation. And I was like, oh my goodness, you are the one that's making this music. And it opened a dialogue. And it was kind of, I call it my instantaneous plant reawakening, because all of a sudden it's...
How long ago was that?
Pretty much very close to the time that I was already living here. So I'd say I've been living here about 15 years. So I would say maybe about 14 years ago. I mean, it was very, very early on in my time here. And all of a sudden there was this like understanding, not just that the plant was the musician, but that the plant was alive, that the plant was aware, that the plant was, conscious, that this plant was way more than anything I had ever given space for. And my engineering mind wanted to absolutely know how the plant, like how the box worked. And my musician mind wanted to understand how you were making notes of music out of it. Like where was this music coming from? And my entire spiritual side was kind of saying, hello, you're talking to a plant. And that was it. Like that was my rabbit hole.
When you talk about plant consciousness, you take consciousness to mean something which most humans think that consciousness in the brain, somewhere in the body, here, and I'm not saying that's true, but in this case, or it is a soul of some sort. In this case, what do you take consciousness for? How could you define it?
Yeah, and I think that this is probably the thing that I love about working with plants, is that plants forced me out, first of all, out of the definition of the idea that consciousness is a brain function, because obviously it's not. I mean, the more you start working with the more than human world, the more you realize that consciousness exists across so many different forms.
Right.
So you're like, okay, so it's not brain. And therefore, I'm very now conscious, play on words a little bit, of the fact that I use the word mind and brain very differently. Like to me, mind is what we all share. All of us have mind. All of us have the ability to experience this awareness of the world, of the multiple layers of the world, of all these sensibilities. And that mind is what connects us to consciousness. So consciousness to me is a heightened level. It's an awareness. It's an awareness just my physical essence, but of everything beyond that. Now, science will define consciousness in many different terms, and there's a lot of arguing, let's just say, in the scientific community, because plants challenge the traditional concepts of consciousness. So there's some that will just outright say consciousness is not possible because plants do not have a brain, and therefore brains are the center. But that's the human-centric, unfortunately, the human-centric life that that has caused us so many problems in the world, where when we look across multiple cultures, we don't have the same problem because they're not so tied to this definition.
Scholars who study consciousness call it the C word.
Exactly, because it's very, I trust me, I've had arguments. I mean, I've now traveled and given so many talks and been on so many panels and had so many discussions, and almost always, it's very rare that I get anybody who could have any kind of discussion saying plants are not conscious for any reason other than the fact that they don't have a brain. It's almost like 99% a shutdown only by human neurobiologists who focus on brains, period.
Okay, so you're equating the brain and the mind as one thing. Is that correct?
No, on the contrary, that's what I just said. Because working with plants for so long, right? Plants are conscious and plants do not have a brain. Right. So therefore, mind is something that really exudes beyond. Mind is the thing. Brain is just it's a muscle. It's an organ, just like we have lots of different organs that do different things. And this goes back to also the conversation we haven't touched on, but it's also part of the same argument as the central nervous system. Like a lot of this conversation is you have to have a combination of mind and the very specific central nervous system that we as humans have. Well, there's plenty of nervous system like activities that, for example, plants and other, more than human beings produce that have nothing to do with the current biological implementation of the nervous system in the human being. And so if we were instead to extrapolate and take the word, mind and, nervous system for their functions and not necessarily their biology, we would then give ourselves lots of space to approach consciousness across many different types of beings with many different biological interpretations. And that would be so much more enriching for us because we would learn so many different ways to process the same information.
Well, now you mentioned before I have guests on, I always give them a questionnaire to fill out, and you write that this is less about metaphor and more about the lived intelligence of plants. Can you explain that?
This episode is brought to you by Cologuard. Do you know what's really scary? Not screening for colon cancer when you turn 45. The Cologuard test is non-invasive, requires no special prep or time off work, and ships right to your door. In just 3 simple steps, Cologuard takes the scare out of colon cancer screening. If you're 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about the Cologuard test. Cologuard is available by prescription only. Learn more or request a prescription today at Cologuard.com/screen.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
Yeah, I think when we start, many people who are, for example, plant communicators or even people who love plants will often talk about plants from a metaphorical perspective. And there is so many things we can learn about, how plants do things and that extrapolate that concept into, how do we as humans do. For example, herbalists are a great example of like, oh, well, if you have a tummy ache, you should take this plant, or you have this other, you can do certain pieces. So there's that aspect. And then there's the fact that plants, for example, operate inside of an ecosystem in certain ways. So the example of, plants as, purifiers of air. And so therefore, if you think like a plant, then you purify your air by doing these types of things. And so you adapt to these metaphors onto the human being. And that is one wonderful way of working with plants. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a good idea. It's a great idea. There's so many things, but there's also so many other ways of working with plants, because you can work with plants directly also as like the plant that is sitting on my desk right now. And I have a very unique relationship. And through that relationship, I'm able to gain information where I can work with that plant as this plant can be a model. So there are things that this particular plant is doing in my environment where I also live in this environment. So seeing how the plant reacts helps me understand how I react. There are things that I can extrapolate also as a mentor, like the plant. I can sit and have a communication through many different ways, whether we're talking about through art, or whether we're talking about through what people might call telepathy, or whether we're talking about emotions. And I can have a relationship and I can receive information from this plant that helps guide me, because a plant has a logic that is very different from my own. And then there's also the idea of co-creation, right? I can pass information to the plant that can then come back to me in different forms. And we open up a dialogue that allows me to have this two-way conversation, which is also very different. So my work really looks to working with plants at 360 degrees, all the way around, the same as we would work with any other being, whether we're talking about a human being or, a dog or a cat or anything. The idea is really about bringing us back to the idea that we are both beings of this world. We're both beings of nature. We all have a series of talents and skills. I know how to do some things because I have legs, because I have arms, because I can move. And plants know how to do some things because they're rooted in the ground, because they have many more sensors than we do, because they've had so many more years of evolution than I do. And so if we combine our skills, and I don't look at you as an object or just as a metaphor but instead I look at you as a living being that I'm co-creating with, then how much more and how differently can I create the world around me?
Okay, now I got that. But the next question, this begs the next question. It doesn't really beg it, but I would like to ask your permission if you'd like to share a communication that you've had with the plant. Could be small, could be important, could be any kind of communication that has influenced you in some way. I'll give you
for me, it's every single day. I mean, if you go to my social media, you'll see it all over the place, because I am continuously in collaboration with the plants around me, whether it's Gary the silver fir, who's right outside my window, to Noel, the Christmas cactus, who is my business partner. So right now I'm working very, very closely with Noel. I had a previous business partner, Spider Plant. And so Spider Plant, for example, was a plant with which I built many of during COVID, I got a very, very clear communication from Spider Plant, which was twofold. One side of it was purposely healing. So Spider Plant was way more of a healer than I ever was. And so at the very beginning of COVID, for example, Spider Plant at one point, like literally I was in my room, I was, doing some work, and I got a tap on the shoulder, you might say, that said, stop what you're doing. I need you to put on a live stream right now of plant music, because right now people are struggling, they're anxious, they're worried, and I need to produce music that is going to calm people down. And so I created these like hour or 2 hour long, I don't even remember how long they were, live streams, which were just, plant music that was being produced by Spider Plant. In that, we had a number over time as things started to develop and we started to get more information. I had certain guidance that was coming, and Spider Plant and I started to collaborate on a few different fronts. We created a workshop, you might say. It was actually more of a course. It was like a course. It was that we created specifically to address some of the issues that were kind of rising to the surface for the people that I particularly worked with, and in turns to what was happening in COVID. And I remember sitting there, and Spider Plant was like, okay, we're going to work on this. You're going to do this. And then, I would be like, well, what about that? And then we started to so I developed an entire course structure, also with another plant, a Himalayan cedar, and with some other small elements. And then also we created a multi-track, really beautiful piece of music called it was called Sonic Bliss. It was like an interspecies music that was done with 7 musicians, 5 plants. It was 8 musicians, 5 plants, 3 humans. And we recorded this all in pieces and had it edited together. And a lot of that was really Spider Plant's guidance. Like I would have never thought to do that. So my work is very closely tied with either soliciting, like Noelle and I sit and we have very specific, meetings, business meetings, you might say, or sometimes spontaneous. I'll get a request or I'll get information and then I'll sit down and I'll try to go deeper in it, or I'll bring it into something else.
Well, this is quite interesting. Of course, it's interesting. And since I work in the psychic world, I'm a psychic medium, so I'm always talking to souls of those who have passed. But a part of my work, especially early on, many, many years ago, I didn't realize that the soul world is just rife with negativity and I would get attacked, that kind of thing. And during COVID, it was a very difficult time for me and those like me. But I'm asking and wondering, is there the equivalent of that in the plant world? Could there be negativity in the communication somehow? Have you come across that?
Yeah, so this is a really great question, which I think is an excellent example of the way that plants think differently than human beings. So plants don't operate in this realm of positive and negative the way that we normally think of it.
Right.
Plants operate much more on, is something useful or is something not useful? Okay. Is this something that constructs an ecosystem or an element, or is it something that destroys? And destruction isn't always seen as something negative. So this concept of when we think about humans, we tend to want to, how do I say this? We tend to want to attach the word negative to the idea that somebody or something is doing something for no reason other than to just create harm.
Okay.
The plant world doesn't really operate that much because the plant world, sure, something can be harmful, but the harmer is usually doing it for a reason. And so it flips the entire story. And your question becomes, what is its use? Right. And then what is my reaction supposed to be to that? In other words, is my reaction to defend? Yeah. Is my reaction to accept? Is my reaction to adapt? Is my reaction to attack back? Like, it becomes very different and it takes away. And I think this was probably one of the most difficult aspects, and I find most challenging as a human being, but also the most rewarding of working so closely with the more than human world, is that you stop arbitrarily using certain labels and you get down to the substance, which allows you to look at things from the perspective of, okay, why is this happening? Yes, to a certain extent, but more importantly, what is my actual role in this? Like, am I just supposed to roll over and allow this to happen to me? Or am I supposed to do something? And if so, what does that doing something mean? Yeah. So it's a great, as a person who saw the world very much through black and white eyes for a long time and had a lot of heartache from it.
Ladies and gentlemen, she's making a horrible face when she says that.
It's very, very painful. But instead, now, not just is there more compassion, but there's also much more understanding. And attacks are important, right? Sometimes you do have to defend. Sometimes you do have to attack. But that is not seen from a place of fear or a place of judgment, but instead of a place of, how is even that useful? I would say that that's probably the difference. So I don't really...
Good.
Yeah, I just don't see it in the same ways anymore.
I get it. Now, I'm going to have to apologize to our audience and to you, Tigrilla, because I'm going to jump to another subject of yours that I love, but in some way maybe linked to this. It may be not linked. The architecture of the soul.
Yeah. Like I said, I live in Damanhur, right? So Damanhur, we have a very rich understanding of what we call spiritual physics, and spiritual physics is the understanding of the cosmology. For me, as a person who has studied with many different schools, it was the first thing that finally like linked everything together. Like all of a sudden, all these different schools that I've studied with and all these different, conversations that I have with people started to apply them. So the cosmology of the soul is a really interesting piece, because once you start to realize how the soul gets put together from a physiological perspective, let's just use it for that word for a second, then all of a sudden everything about us starts to make a lot more sense. And so the idea that the soul is actually comes from multiple parts, from outside of the world of form and inside of the world of form. And so there's a piece that travels from outside the world of form into the world of form, picks up a series of personalities, and then there is this essence, this thing that we call the elements, or in biological terms, it can be used as the deep pattern, is a piece that is always uniquely you, uniquely a part of you. And therefore, once those personalities get connected, then all of a sudden the incarnation happens. And so understanding how those personalities work, how do I connect into them? And more importantly, what happens when I pass, because the reincarnation mechanism moves us out, because we practice very active reincarnation here in Damanhur. So, we work with the idea of, okay, the personalities that I was able to assimilate into my soul structure, which ones stay versus which ones instead, I wasn't able to really connect into them. So they come back out and they are free to make other experiences with other souls.
Wait. I need to step back just one step and have you, I'm visualizing when you're speaking, and I see 5 or 6 of you at Damanhur, and you've got your hands into the soul of somebody or into their organs. Wait, what do you mean here with the, having, it's like split personalities, one leaves, but the other one stays? I think I haven't got it yet.
Yeah, to a certain extent. So imagine that you have this element of yourself, this piece that is like immobile, right? This is the essence of you to a certain extent, right? And then as you're coming through, you pick up a series of different personalities. When you
say you're coming through, what do you mean?
As you're passing from a non-incarnate moment to an incarnate moment. Okay. Let's just use it that way, because I think that's the easiest way. Right? So you're passing in, you pick up a series of personalities that are useful to you in the life that you're going to be living. Let's just assume for now 8, right? 8 personalities that connect into your soul structure, into this main attractor thing that puts everything together. And so you have the essence of who you are. You have these personalities that are useful to you, have skills and knowledge and information that's going to be important for you in this life. And so when you incarnate, you are more than just this one thing. You are actually made up of multiple pieces that are learning how to get to, how to work together in this life, because they all have elements that are important for you to accomplish that piece that this life is for, what it is that you need to do, learn, experience in this life.
Okay. All right. Now, when you say you let them collaborate instead of compete, it's that let them, this passive use of the words, just they will automatically collaborate. And the compete.
No, not necessarily. They're going to do their things, right? Okay. So in part, you have, we all have kind of a dominant personality, right? The personality that's like more in command of things and more aware of what's going on in the moment. And for each life, we all have these types of pieces. We have, sub-personalities and other types of aspects of ourselves that come out in different moments, somewhere on a regular basis, some instead on a less frequent basis. We also have those that are developing, right? We call that information, like in formation. I'm being formed as I go, as I move, and I'm trying to develop these types of things. And so the goal of me as my completeness is, how do I get all of these different parts of myself to to work together. So it's an active process. This isn't a passive, like, oh,
you're making
it's just
me
all
think
super
I
nice.
missed something. I have to go back. I have to go back and do it again, because I definitely, those personalities just went right past me.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
yeah, okay. I get it. I think I get it. But it's such a, I don't want to say it's such a deep concept, because it's simple. It's quite simple, but it's so light that it seems to be flying away from me, who am dealing with the third dimension here, where everything seems so heavy. Now,
Right.
how do you survive in Damanhur? Do you leave it every now and then and go some way far away and then come back? I mean,
You mean,
I get the impression.
you mean physically?
Oh, on the one hand, as you're speaking, it seems, I hate to use the word, that it's a sect, or it's a place where there is a controlling factor. But to listen to you speak of plant life, that cannot be, unless you are not well there. You know what I mean? Unless you are ready to throw in the towel. That's it. I've had it with this man on these crazy Italians. I got to get out of here. I'm trying. I'm not trying to figure you out, but I'm trying to wonder what actually is going on there.
Yeah. So Damanhur is, it's funny because we often say, we often say it's super hard to get in and super easy to get out, which is kind of the opposite of a sect, right?
It's super easy to get out.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you choose one day to not be a Damanhurian, you just wake up one day and you say, I'm not a Damanhurian, and that's it. It's like, that's all it is.
Okay.
It's really not that hard.
And why is it
no
difficult
problems
to get in?
Huh?
Why is it difficult?
Well, because in the sense that it's not, so we are a school. We are we call ourselves a laboratory for humanity. We're not this one thing. So a lot of people think of Damanhur. If you've never been to the first city, which is where I live, it's not one territory. It's not like one piece of land. We're in this beautiful valley called the Valkuzela Valley. My neighbors are not all Damanhurians.
Right.
My neighbors are, people from this valley and this area. And so it isn't, you're not immersed in only Damanhurianness, all day. That being said, we are, I guess it's kind of like saying I'm originally from Miami. And so I am a Miamian all through and through, even whether I'm living there or not. Yeah. And that's kind of the same way. I mean, it's like, this is my, this is part of my school. This is my friends and such. But I'm going to Turin on Saturday, and I'll be hanging out with a different grouping of friends. And when I go and I travel and I hang out with other friends. So your life is very rich because we have the opportunity to experience all these different parts. But we're also part of a community, which means we support each other, we help each other, we do research together, we explore different ideas. We have a lot of, and we're a magical society and an esoteric society. So we have, ritual work that we do together, and we have all these different pieces. So that's why I said it's kind of like, Oz or, Hogwarts. It's like, I'm not always at Hogwarts, but I am part of Hogwarts, and I'm part of this world. And so I'm definitely not a muggle anymore. Like, forget that flew away. But it doesn't mean I don't interact with, muggles, or I'm not a part of it.
This is all extremely enriching. Now, we need you back. We need you back. And I'll be thinking about this for the next couple of days. But it's so important for our listeners to hear things like this. And I do suggest everyone to go to her website, her social media, her YouTube channel, to see exactly what she is doing and to understand more from what she has said today. I really thank you for coming on the show, and I do sincerely hope to have you back, Tigrilla. And what can I say? Is there one thing you want to say to our audience before you leave?
I would say the most important thing is let your curiosity lead you where you go, right? When we think about plants, the thing about plants that's so beautiful is that, they're always taking in information and then doing something with it and exploring where that information is going to lead them. So allow yourself to also be taken away by your curiosity.
I bet you that 90% of the listeners, after listening to this episode, go out crazy and buy all plants.
I love it. Sounds great to me.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow Let's Talk Soul podcast on Instagram. Let's Talk Soul podcast is a production of Electrocast Media. Our executive producers are Mark Netter and Peter Rafelson. If you like our show and like what you hear, please subscribe and give us a rating wherever you enjoy podcasts. And remember, stay curious, stay inspired, and never stop exploring the depths of your soul.
Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you that it's never too late to write your next chapter. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Join me in this community where through powerful storytelling, we heal and reclaim our inherent magic.
Electrocast.